Welcome back to the channel, guys. We're down here in the shop doing a little pre-season, post-season archery business. So we're taking a look at my old arrows that I've been using for the last couple of years, and we're actually going to be going through and probably doing a multiple part series on building out a new hunting arrow for this upcoming season. Right now we can touch on what I was using before. You can also read an article on that in the link below on my website, where I discuss this Black Eagle Deep Impact and how I built it and how I think it's a great whitetail hunting arrow. So for now, let's jump into what arrow I'm going to be going to for this next season. At least we're going to give it a whirl, see how it goes, and we'll take you through the whole process on how I build it and how it comes out. So the arrow we're going to be going with this season, and we're going to give this a try, is the Axis 5mm. I'm switching up to the 204 diameter just to try things out. I haven't used them in quite a few years, but I was shooting this past season the Deep Impact. This is the Deep Impact 300 by Black Eagle. For my specs, I shoot a 28 inch draw and 70 pounds, and the way I figure out what I want to be using is I use this pinwheel software, which you can go through and set up multiple different specifications for your bow and for your arrow, and basically determine what will work for you and what won't. This spine indicator up on the top left shows you how this setup will work for your specific bow and draw and weight and everything. So that's where I usually start coming up with my ideas. And for this arrow, we're going to be trying to build a pretty heavy, hard-hitting arrow. This Black Eagle Deep Impact is weighing right in at 545 grains, which to a lot of people is a heck of a heavy arrow. So we're going to be going a little heavier just to give it a shot. I know this is probably a pretty controversial subject for a lot of people, but from what I've found over the years, getting that heavy arrow and having that good penetration in that quiet bow, most importantly that quiet bow from that shot, is super critical, and it really does make a difference. So we're going to go ahead and build out these 5mm Axis arrows. We're going to be running the Ethics Archery insert system, which I've used in the past. Pull those down here. This is an insert-outsert. It's got a long aluminum post, and I went with a stainless steel sleeve. So a good example of what it looks like in an assembled fashion is about like that. Now, if you guys have been staying up to date in the archery world, it's a pretty similar system to the new Snyder Core system by Iron Will Outfitters, and they have some other ideas for 204 diameter arrows with hit inserts. I just really like the Ethics Archery system. It seems to really work out well for me, and they have fantastic tolerances as well. So we're going to get started on this build. Alright, so the first step for me with any new set of arrows is going to be getting out the spinner and taking this full length shaft and just giving it a nice light spin. What we're going to be doing is watching for each end and seeing what end we get wobble in. On a full length shaft, even with high quality arrows, you'll usually be able to pick out one end of the arrow, if not both, that have some sort of wobble to them. So now when I'm giving this arrow a spin, it's really looking like this end of the arrow over here is getting a slight bit of wobble. So that's the end we're going to want to take off the arrow. And I'll just take a Sharpie and just mark an X on this side. That's the side I'll be taking off. So I'll go through the whole lot of arrows, and I'll mark each side that needs to be taken off, and then we'll just take them down to our starting point size, which is going to be for this setup right around 29.5. For cutting these arrows, I have a pretty rudimentary or redneck setup here. I don't have an arrow saw, just trying to stay down on a budget. So this is just a simple setup that I made out of some pieces of wood and a Dremel attachment. So it works. It gets the arrows cut. The most critical thing being that you follow up with any cut with an arrow squaring device. This is a G5 arrow squaring device. which works well. It takes off that off-center cut that you typically get with, all arrow saws. So, good quality saw or not, you're still going to want to always square them up. So this setup seems to work pretty well for me. So we'll get these cut, and then we'll jump on over to getting the inserts and the arrows and squaring them up. Alright guys, so we've got them all cut. They're all cut down to right about 29.5 inches, which with the software we were looking at earlier, looks like it'll be a good starting point. Two of the arrows had to get cut off a little awkwardly compared to the others. So I've had that question in the past where people think the label has to be at the back of the arrow. It really doesn't have to be. I mean, the arrows should be as straight as possible, and whatever wobbly end you have, you should take that off and don't worry about where the labels are. So aesthetically, if they're a little mismatched, it's really no big deal, especially in my eyes. So straighter arrow is much more important. What we're going to do now is just take a look at each individual arrow. We're going to square up both ends, so the knock end and the end that the insert's going to be going into. We'll get the squaring device out and we'll do that, and I can show you a little tip how to make that go a little quicker, especially if you have maybe a rough cut. So let's look at that. So what I like to do is take a look at each cut on the arrow and make sure they're as square as possible. And normally with this G5 squaring device, you can just run it right up, give it a few passes, and clear up any deficiencies you see. But if you have some that are rough, you could take a small piece of sandpaper and just speed up the process a little bit by putting that piece of sandpaper in there and getting out maybe a section of it that's a little more raised, or however the cut came out. If it came out a little bit not perfect, you can just use that, and that'll square it up a little faster, and then you can run it back through and get that edge of the carbon nice and smooth and polished with the original diamond edge on that. So the arrows are all squared up now. We're going to go ahead and get these inserts prepped. I just wanted to show you guys them. I don't know if you can see them fairly well, but it's a long center post with basically a footer or sleeve, whatever you want to call it. And these have proven to be really successful. The inherent design flaw with 204 arrows was when they developed the hit system and did not have any sort of footer to go with it. So for example, a small hit insert that would be retained up inside the shaft with no external sleeve or footer would cause points to snap and tear out the side or blow back into the arrow, just destroying and mushrooming the arrow. This system really solves that, and this is why I love them. Specifically with these, it's a heavier system. I opted for a stainless steel sleeve as opposed to the aluminum for a little bit more durability, but the aluminum post keeps my weight down closer to where I want to be. You have the option of cutting these posts down at these cut marks. I'm going to leave them full length just because the software is telling me I'm going to be able to get a decent spine out of these and still retain, not go crazy with the weight. They're going to end up right around 640 grains, which, yeah, to a lot of people that's a whole heck of a lot of weight, but it'll be exciting to build a pretty heavy, hard-hitting arrow. I also run 150 grain points, so it is a lot of weight up front. The FOC isn't out of this world crazy. It's right about 18% is where it's going to end up, which is high. But I've had success between 16, 17, 18, and 19%. That's where I've run some of my high FOC setups. But all in all, it's a pretty durable front end of the arrow there with that length and a thick wall, 260 spine shaft. So we'll see how it works out. Alright guys, so we're getting things prepped to glue these inserts and outsets in. We have this bone-in cool flex. This is a hot melt. I've used it in the past and it seems to work pretty well. I have had a couple pull out in really difficult targets and whatnot, but we're gonna skip that probably for this. I really like the boning insert iron. I've used this for the last couple years and it's really worked well for me. It's extremely durable. I haven't had any pullouts for any of the inserts. It does take quite a while to cure, but that does give me plenty of time to get things all situated and get these things spinning perfectly true. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to prep the inside of the arrow shaft. We're going to use just a Q-tip and some cleaner, clean the carbon out of the inside, and then get some insert iron on these inserts and slide them in, spin them, and get them all lined up. Okay, so we'll get started on our first insert here. You really only need a small amount with this boning insert iron. I just like to do a little bit up the front and just down the middle. And what we're going to do is just work it into this arrow and give it a nice few twists up and down. Make sure we're spinning it thoroughly and getting that completely coated around. And then we'll get it forced all the way down. So with this excess that's right around the exterior, you don't even have to wipe that off. You just get a little bit more since we're putting our insert on. I mean our outsert. Sorry. Just a small drop on either side of the arrow. Just kind of work that around. We'll take our outsert. We'll slide that over, twisting, a little in and out. We'll get that on there. Now we can wipe this excess off and we'll get it on the spinner and we'll just get this thing spinning true. So we'll just take a few light spins. You don't need to crank on it or anything, just a few light spins. And if you give this a little twist, right or left, you can usually find a sweet spot. Right now, it looks like we're looking pretty damn good. So I really like to use this Strickland Helix. It's a slightly higher end broadhead, but it really spins true, and from my perspective, I can really watch the tip of that to make sure I get it spinning as true as possible. Now what you can also do is take any sheet of paper or anything like this and hold it up to it to give yourself a visual reference. That usually helps to see if you're getting slight wobbles. In this case, this one looks like it's spinning about as good as I can get it. So what I'll do is I'll hold that there. I'll spin this broadhead right off very gently so I don't cause the insert or outsert to twist at all. And then this arrow is good. We'll just continue this across the rest of the arrows. Alright guys, so I've got these all glued up now. Like I mentioned earlier, there is about 24-hour to 48-hour waiting period for this boning insert iron to cure. So we'll continue later on with the rest of this build in part 2. For now, I'd just like to go over how everything came out. All of them are spinning perfectly true. When you do this, you want to make sure you take the time to just twist the inserts and outserts into the right position to get that perfect spin. So they all came out perfect, and we can now take a look at roughly what we're going to end up for final grain weight. Part 2 is really going to consist of tuning these out bare shaft. So for now, we can just take a look at what they'll weigh in this final size. If we have to trim down, they'll be a little bit lighter, but I think we'll pretty much end up right where we're at here. So let's take the scale out and see what these things weigh. Got the scale out. You can take a look at what we have for weight. I also have 4 vanes here since this is a unfletched arrow at the moment, so we can add those on. But for now, let's see what this weighs without fletches. Right about 618. Add 4 fletches onto there. 642.2. So we have 3 different vane combinations that we'll run, and we'll go over that in the third part of this video. But for now, before that, we'll do a bare shaft test, make sure they fly pretty true that way, and then we'll carry on with the build after that. So right now it's looking like it's going to be a pretty significant hard-hitting arrow. Excited to shoot it, excited to use it. So stay tuned for the rest of this, guys.